Hello and welcome to another episode of Tai'Shar, Manethrin, a Wheel of Time podcast. I am Will.
And I'm Sam.
And we're here once again to continue discussing the Great Hunt. So we're going to dive right in. Last time we left our heroes, Rand was approaching Cairhien. Cairhien is really interesting to me because it's where we get an introduction to Desdemar,
the Game of Houses,
the great game. And
I keep trying to sing the Game of Thrones. Like, no.
Yeah, and I think
but it is basically.
Yes, I think we made it through the whole last episode without mentioning Game of Thrones. So we're going to talk a little bit about the obvious.
Littlefinger would fit in perfectly in
Cairhien. Yes, he would. The obvious comparison here is Game of Thrones really is a look at kind of just a world where everybody's playing the game of houses in a lot of. And the only thing that I find a little frustrating about it is this book came out before the Game of Thrones series started. And so it's likely that a lot of people are going to be like, oh, this is just derivative. And it's like, no, actually kind of the opposite. In fact, and that's not the only thing I think that people can find similar.
No, of course not. Yeah.
The Blight and the Borderlands are an awful lot like, the Wall with Winterfell and all that. There's some similarities there.
Yeah, unfortunately, there are some strong tropes associated with high fantasy. And although Game of Thrones does an excellent job of subverting a lot of those tropes, it all still fulfills a lot of them. And I would say that Wheel of Time probably shamelessly embraces a lot more of them.
It's true.
which is something I love about it personally.
So Rand arrives outside of Cairhien and is in an inn. He's there with Selene and with Loial and Huron. They meet Colliver, who's
and immediately are involved in the Game of Houses, even though they don't necessarily want to be.
Right. And I like the way in the audiobook that Michael Kramer does Colliver's voice when he's asking him questions. He's like, yes, quite. Really, yeah.
He's reading something into every word that Rand says when Rand is literally just like, I don't know what you're talking about, man.
Yeah. And so and the whole thing where he tries to determine if Rand is lying about being from Andor by mentioning Gareth Bryn and but I don't recall his name. And he says, Gareth Bryn. He says, yeah, such a young man for such a post. And he says, no, he's old enough to be your grandfather or whatever. And
right.
And he's like, I meant when he first came to the role. And it's, you just feel
would get really exhausting really quick.
Yeah. And you really identify with Rand in this, where he's just like, I don't want any part of this business.
Please stop trying to make me play your game. I don't want to.
The thing that I enjoy about it as a person who is not, I appreciate and respect Game of Thrones. Part of me likes the fact that it's kind of making fun of this because It's like, this is the boring part of a lot of fantasy books.
It's not like the central theme.
Yeah. And it's like good. The whole business of who's going to have the throne and all this.
Right. And it really is a side point in the end of this, it's mentioned in passing, so to speak, the outcome of this whole series of events. Later, Rand's like, I didn't participate. And Moraine is like, doing nothing is a valid strategy in the Game of Houses.
Right. I love it. It happens in this book, and then it happens again like later in the series. Somebody says regarding Perrin, it's like, wow, he's really great. And at the Game of Houses, and it's like Perrin is even more oblivious than Rand.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
he's just calling it like he sees it, and
which no one in Cairhien does.
Yeah, so they assume that he's just brilliant because he's saying all these things. It's like, whoa, yeah, oh, okay, That's a funny idea that all these people who are trying to undermine one another subtly, so they think someone else is doing the same thing. It's like, oh, well, yeah, you're brilliant. Yeah, look at you.
You're right. Exactly. And I love how Selene is just like, peace. I'm
yeah. So yeah, they spend the night there, and Selene leaves in the middle of the night. She does show back up later.
She does, yeah,
kind of randomly, and dips out just as quickly. It's just like to confirm, like, yeah, she's okay, and she's just doing stuff on her own terms, and
Yeah, it does bring up a question in my mind a little bit. It's like, okay, how did she even, getting back to the last episode, I guess, and getting back to, the fact that Huron, Loyal, and Rand found Selene in the Portal Stone world. Like, how did she even know they were there? I mean, I know this is getting into later in the book where we find out who she is, but I just don't even know how she is. Maybe she was following them or something, but it's just it's a weird question. Like, how does she always seem to find Rand? Like, what is, I don't know. Yeah. It's one power or Taviran, I guess.
Yeah. Some connection that she has with Luz Therin.
Yeah, maybe so. Anyway, not
it's a good enough question. So they go into Cairhien. Who do they run into but Tom Maryland?
Tom Maryland is back.
Up to this point, a first-time reader might foolishly think Tom Maryland is dead. We kind of spoiled that in our review of Eye of the World, but at the same time, it's like
I think it was definitely foreshadowed a lot that he was still. I mean, there was a lot of hints thrown out there.
I mean, it's like any other non-death where a character just runs off into.
Right. It's the rule. If you do not see them die, they're not dead. I mean, it's exactly. A character of enough significance. If you do not see them die, they're not dead. It's a good rule of thumb.
Until they uncover their bodies in the collapsed Red Keep or whatever it is.
There you go.
So
that's very nice.
So we meet Tom. He's got himself a lady. He's got a steady gig. Kind of says he's kind of giving up the traveling. Dina, who sounds a little young for him.
Yeah, she's like she's described as a few years older than Rand. She's Cairhien. So yeah, of course, just still picturing Sam Elliott here.
Right.
She just got that charm.
Right. She's being trained to be
a bard, is what he said. Yeah, he says she's going to be a bard.
And she seems pretty talented from the sound of it. You also get lots of little details in these scenes that I like about a little bit more about what it's like to be a Gleeman and traveling and all that. Tom talks about.
Yeah, there aren't many Gleemen in this series, even though they're talked about a lot. Other than Tom, there aren't many that are Gleemen. So it is always nice when we get a little more detail.
It's kind of like there's more money to be made out on the road, but he's found a good deal here where there's an innkeeper that's paying him regularly. I think it's funny he mentions something about how he's also hired these players. And talks about actors for the first time and acts disgusted at that.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know. I make them see all the scenes and hear all the
with my
sounds.
Harp.
And they
chant.
It just makes you appreciate the character, his love of storytelling and just the pure kind of aspect of just telling a story is something. You almost feel like maybe there's a little bit of Robert Jordan coming out in there that's like speaking a story, telling a story is kind of the purest form of creating imagery for an audience, even more than creating it in a form of a movie or a TV show or something.
Yeah, you always figure in every piece of fiction that the creator, consciously or unconsciously, identifies with one character, perhaps more than others. Yeah, I always think of Family Guy and Brian. Harlan says Brian is basically him. Maybe more of a drinker. But I think of Game of Thrones again. Samwell Tarly, he's this rotund, Night's Watch guy, and he's got a lot of parts, but he ends up writing the Song of Ice and Fire at the end,
right?
And so it's like, okay, obviously George R. R. Martin was probably thinking of himself a little bit with Samwell Tarly, even though, so I think that there's something to be said for Jordan having characters in mind of that he would identify with, perhaps,
right,
when it comes to storytelling.
So at this point in the story, we have, as we did earlier, another sudden Trolloc attack.
It's a trope.
Yes. The Trollocs show up in Cairhien, but the way that they manage to get by without being seen is
the ways, right?
Well, that's how they get there. But I was going to say that they have guys that are kind of acting like they're puppets, so that being carried around. And then this is also the first time we meet the Illuminators, because Rand and Loyal run and to the Illuminators Guild.
Aludra, you're right. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And it's a short scene, and then we don't really see her again until, I don't know, next book or something.
Yeah, shows up early and doesn't have too big of a role until the later books. But yeah, the Illuminators Guild, they're a specialized group of merchants that make fireworks. And the main guild is in, what is it, Tenchiko or?
Yeah, I was trying to remember. Yeah, it sounds right.
It's not in Kyrian. This is kind of like a different, this is like a chapter house. But anyway.
I just remember at one point she says, Talmos, you son of a goat or something.
Yes. She's a fun character. I could see.
Yeah, for sure. They describe her as being like a little bit older, but a good looking woman. I don't know.
Right. I could see her. Well, because everybody's good looking.
Exactly. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to get back to that.
Yeah. And so the chapter house in Kyrian gets burned down. And it's kind of like Aludra loses her job a little bit over it.
For sure.
Later on. But we don't get into that until later. So after leaving the Illuminators Guild, they get back and they have stolen the horn and the dagger back, but it's now in a chest that Padon Fane can't open. Just right after that happens, they run into Ingtar and Matt and Perrin and the rest of the Shannarans. And Rand actually laughs at just the absurdity of this. You guys finally show up.
Right. We've already done all the hard work.
Right after we lost the horn and the dagger again. He's like, well, they've taken it. And then this is where even more Ingtar is starting to show that he's desperate to get the horn. He starts to use I must have it. And Huron calls him on it. He's like, that's not the way you talk about things. You don't say you must have it.
Right.
The wheel weaves as the wheel wills, and we're subject to it. And he starts to kind of question him a little bit. Something that we failed to mention up to this point, because it honestly doesn't play a big role until this point, is the fact that Varen had been tagging along with the Shannarans shortly after Rand disappeared.
Yeah, you got to have your obligatory Aes Sedai.
And Varen is such a fun character. I mean,
yeah, at one point somebody's talking to Moraine and says, well, yeah, Varen was with us. Didn't you send her? And Moraine was like, no, I did not. She went on her own accord.
There's a scene all the way back at the beginning of the book in Shinar when Fane's been taken out of the prison, where Varen just kind of figures out that Rand is the Dragon Reborn. She just figures it out, standing there with Swan and Moraine. And
yeah.
Just showing
you could see like the wheels turning in her head.
And it kind of freaks Moraine and Swan out. But Varen is like, I'm with you guys. Like, I'm all for it. I'll keep it a secret. So she kind of joins in their conspiracy to help Rand, more or less.
It's just fortunate that Varen was there and not like Leandrin.
Right. Yeah, and Leandrin was there, but
she wasn't in the room at that point.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like going back and reading it again. It's like, oh man, she was there a lot.
Yeah.
Before all the things that happened with her.
Yeah, she was, and part of the reason why I didn't mention her earlier is that a lot of what she does in the first half of the book is not all that, doesn't have much bearing on her story.
Right. It talks about her just kind of like having a pouty mouth and being a red Aja and like being good at healing, I think.
She's very clearly not on Rand's side. So
yeah,
that's the main takeaway that you get from meeting her early in the book. And you start to get the feeling that maybe she's part of the Black Aja pretty early on. Like, because she's the first one to bring it up, and she's threatening people and saying things. It's very un-Aes Sedai-like behavior. That's what some of the Aes Sedai have been doing for the first half of the book. Varen is with Ingtar and the others when they show up in Kyrian and meet Rand. And then they decide to take one of these invitations that Rand has been offered, that he's gotten while he's been basically playing the game of houses without playing the game of houses, to go to Barthanas's house for another social kind of. The second we see, I can't remember.
Right, at one point I think he like threw a few of them in like the fireplace. And then like he got a bunch more, and I don't know, it was a Huron or Loyal. Somebody's like, you shouldn't throw those in the fire.
Yeah. And like now, if he
maybe it was Varen. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
He finally gets one from the king,
right,
and Barthanas, and got to go to one of these,
right, or else they're gonna kill you.
Yeah,
pretty much was like the takeaway.
Rand mixes with everybody. He runs into Tom again and talks with Tom, which ends up being a problem for Tom later because him talking with Tom,
because people see, it's what gets Denna killed.
Yeah, when he comes back, Tom's lady friend is dead, and they killed her ostensibly because they were trying to get to Tom to find out who Rand was or what he knew or anything that could help in the game of houses. Something that I thought was interesting was Tom never blamed Rand.
Yeah, I was going to make the same point. It's like he just accepts that Rand is who he is. And I think it gets back to Owen a little bit. He identifies with, he wants to sort of protect Rand because he sees a little bit of his nephew in him. And so he doesn't want to blame him, so to speak. He wants to help him. And so he certainly could have. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But for one reason or another, he chooses not to.
But at that same kind of gathering, that's where Rand talks to a few different people who are all kind of speaking in that same Kyrianan way where they
right.
It's like, oh yeah,
reading meaning into every word, and he's like, I don't want to do this.
Getting tired of it. Shortly after that, they find the portal to, or rather, they find the Waygate,
which has Machin Shin just like waiting there.
Yeah, just chilling out.
It's like right there at the gate.
Right.
Instead of it being just like a silvery opening, it's just the blackness of Machin Shin. It's like, close it really quick.
Yeah. I mean, it almost feels comical, like, chunk, open up. Chunk, close. Never mind.
Exactly. We're not going to go through that. That's not going to work out.
Rand does channel at it, but not much else happens there aside from, okay, we're going to try a different way.
Exactly.
to try to get to Tomon Head, which we're only chasing because Padan Fain
at the very
beginning, that's where I'm going to meet you. Which, when you see a map of this whole place, Kyrian is almost as far from
Tomon Head as from anywhere. Yeah. It's the opposite end of the map for sure.
Yeah, as you can get. So the only way.
They end up what they do ends up taking 4 months, and it's like they've lost time, but it would have taken them a long time anyway if they had walked there or rode there.
So what they end up doing is first they go to studying. Yeah, studying Sofu. It's our first time.
Meet Aerith. Oh,
yes. Yeah.
Lots of quivering, tufted ears.
Yeah. So of course,
on Loyal's part.
Yeah, Loyal is kind of falls in love with a female Ogier. There, you get a little taste of Ogier culture.
And it really makes me glad that Jordan chose not to make sort of the elf trope a central part of his books. And I know we talked about the Ogier before being kind of more more like the Ents, and I think that's true. But I think they are also the closest that these books have to elves. And you look at how central elves are to other kind of fantasy stories, and it can be done well, but it also can be done not well. And I appreciate that Jordan chose, for one reason or another, to make his story more about sort of the realm of men in terms of fantasy tropes.
Sure.
And so you get these little hints of other cultures like the Ogier, but it's not central, and I like that. And I think it works well the way they've put it together.
Right. Then we get our first real introduction to the Aiel.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. I guess we really, there's several times in this book where I think there's one point where the Shienarans encounter a single Aiel man. Yeah, when they're with Varen, and he's like ready to fight them all.
Yeah,
he's ready to dance the spears with them, and then he's also ready for Varen to kill him.
Yeah,
and then he's like shocked when she doesn't. But yeah, it's great that it's interesting that we don't really. I don't know if we see the Aiel at all in the first book.
No,
we do, but not. Maybe they're mentioned.
Yeah, they're mentioned a few times. In fact, pretty early on.
Yeah,
they're mentioned. The black veiled Aiel.
Sure.
Is actually
a boogeyman of sorts.
Right. 3
maidens of the spear, I believe.
Yeah.
That are in the steading.
And basically it's just we meet them, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, like they were about to fight, and then the Ogier are like, don't fight here. And they're like, okay.
Yeah. It was like, good point. I never looked at it that way. So they're like, all right, let's open up this Waygate and see, and then the same thing happens.
Right.
And it's like, okay,
Machin Shin
is there.
Machin Shin is buddies with Mordith, who's Padan Fane. So, so you can't use the way gates. Sorry.
Yes. Bottom line is wherever Rand is now, Machin Shin is going to be waiting. Is the idea that we get. So they're talking there, and then Varen's like, okay, look, I happen to know that there's a portal stone nearby.
Right. This does bring up a good point. Later in one of the book, and at one point, I don't remember exactly where, I think it's Varen is talking about the portal stones, and she says that the ways were developed after studying the portal stones, because the portal stones are one of these kind of artifacts that precede the Age of Legends. That it's just one of those things that, like, they could use it in the Way of Legends, in the Age of Legends, but it wasn't something, they didn't make it, and they didn't fully understand it, but they used what they learned to make the ways. So right. I thought that was an interesting kind of tidbit.
Yeah. So Varen is like, we're going to use the portal stone, and she's like whispering to Rand.
Yeah, she's like, you've used one more recently than me. And he's like, you've used one before? She's like, well, no, which means, I've never used one before, which means you've used it more recently than I.
More recently.
Like, touche, Varen. Touche. Yeah.
And then she's like, so you're going to have to basically do this.
Right. And she even says, you'll have to toss the dice. Time to toss the dice.
Then this is when you get into the flicker.
Yeah. And and which is, there's some really cool little mini stories in there, little vignettes of what Rand's life would have been if he never met Moraine, if he married Egwene, there's one where he ends up in the Queen's Guard with Elaine as the queen, and many of them he goes mad. At the end of every one of them, you hear Basilman's voice, "I've won again, Theron," and that's exactly when I expected to hear that cackle.
Yes.
Like, I'm real tired of this dude. Somebody needs to kill him.
Yeah, one of the things that is interesting is we only see Rand's perspective during this, and we know we don't even hear about all of them.
But everyone is experiencing what their alternative lives could have been, and so it's like between the flickers, you'll hear Varen say, "Something is wrong."
Right, and then when they end
and it's
up,
referred to later. Ingtar mentions that he lived other lives, and so it's like we assumed all of them did.
Well, and I just think it was interesting. As soon as they come out, Matt, and this was the first time that I was like, maybe I do like Matt as a character. Matt is immediately like going, I would never betray you. And he's saying,
heck yeah.
He's saying, like, I saw these other lives where I betrayed you, and I would never do that. And so you get a little bit of a taste, because Matt does seem like the kind of guy that if one of them was going to betray him, it was like,
sure. A fair weather friend kind of thing. But right. But like you said, in later books, he's just proves to be so much more of a character than that. And that it is sort of a hint of who he's going to become.
Pausing there and then going back, let's talk about where the ladies have been.
Oh, good. Yeah. I was going to say one of the things I wanted to mention about this book is that we, of course, have the three Ta'Veren. We have these various characters that end up having a lot of perspective chapters. For better or worse, this book is almost exclusively about Rand. But it isn't exclusively about Rand. It's also has some perspective chapters of Nynaeve, but I think Egwene perhaps grows and changes as much as Rand does in this book, even though she doesn't have as many chapters. And so I think it's definitely good that we talk about them.
I really enjoy Egwene's chapters more in the second read, knowing what happens to her later.
Right, because it is, some of them are downright unpleasant in this book. It's just hard to read. It's like hard to watch a character go through some of the stuff that she goes through. But like you said, knowing that this molds her into the character she's going to become, it makes it easier. It makes it more enjoyable.
Right. And when we meet up with Nynaeve and Egwene, they've met Elaine and Min, and they've all kind of become friends.
Right. I just can't help but mention this. It's interesting to me that this is one of those times when Min and Elaine are sort of in the same room, but they're like somehow or another throughout the rest of this book and several more, somehow when Rand is in the same room as Min, he's not in the same room as Elaine also.
Yeah.
It's like we avoid catfights, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, there's the whole thing of Min knows she's going to fall in love.
Yeah.
And Elaine is too. And there's someone else. And it's not Egwene. And so at this point, we know that whatever Egwene and Rand have going on
is not gonna last.
It's not the long-term thing.
And there's one point at the end where Min is snuggled up to Rand, to keep him warm or whatever. I'm thinking, where is Elaine right now?
Yeah.
And somehow she's not there. It's like it just works out where she's not there. So we don't have to have the excuse me.
And I will also say, in reference to, are you familiar with the Bechdel test? It's this thing in filmmaking.
Oh, is it like when two women are not talking about a man?
Yeah, it's
the whole thing.
The Bechdel test. There's a cartoonist. Her last name is Bechdel that had like a 3-panel cartoon of two women. One of them says she only likes movies where there's at least one scene where two women are talking and they don't talk about a man.
Right.
I was just struck by how much this fails that test. It's like, there's not a single scene where one of them doesn't either bring up Rand,
for sure,
or Nynaeve is talking about Lan, or there's some kind of shadow of a man, and
it might be until we get to like Aes Sedai politics in the White Tower,
right?
Maybe with like Elida, you could see where then I mean. Of course, the Dragon Reborn still comes up, but usually they're kind of internal politics they're talking about, which coincidentally is is where we get to the slog. But
yes, we'll cross.
We will slog. We will slog.
Get to it. So they're all in the White Tower.
This is like when we start to get a little more. I mean, throughout this book is when we get more information about how the One Power is used. And this is something I mentioned in The Eye of the World, how, with the perspective chapters are from characters, of course, they don't understand what's going on. But here's when we start to get, and there's one scene, and this is before they get to the White Tower, when they're on a boat, and the Amyrlin seat the Amyrlin seat is trying to train Egwene and Nynaeve. And at one point, I mean, like, of course, Nynaeve has her block where she can only channel if she's angry, which she doesn't really quite understand yet. But at one point, she's like just sitting there concentrating, and then a whole bunch of towels catch on fire.
Yeah,
which is a great moment. I thought that was really shows kind of how she uses the power well.
Yeah, there's lots of moments that you can just picture in the way they describe how the power works. And they're illustrating it by showing different weaves and all this. There's honestly, my first read through, I like the first few chapters that they're in the White Tower, I was reminded a lot of Hogwarts. Right?
Yeah, for sure. Right. That's a good comparison. Of course, this may probably have been written before Harry Potter, but it's not that J.K. Rowling read Robert Jordan and was like, aha, this is what I need to do.
Yeah, it's just a few chapters or a chapter.
Yeah.
So
if anything, I would want more of that. I mean, it was sort of limited before Leandrin spirited them away.
One of the major things that happens in the White Tower is
thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned
the scene. Yes, where Nynaeve
becomes accepted, goes through the Tir-Angriel. Yeah,
and this is an interesting thing because we get her trip through the Tir-Angriel. We get
and the explanation. Shiriam says no one knows if this is real or not. Some people don't come back, and for me, it's like, all right. Obviously, seeing what Rand and Matt and Huron and Ingtar go through in the Portal Sons and Varen, it's like it could very well be just another what if world,
right?
Or it could be like the holodeck,
right? Exactly.
It could be just a magical holodeck, that someone decides to live in forever. And either one of those is completely cool. Like I don't mind.
It's kind of interesting because I'm giving a little info on the future books here, but in comparison to the test to become a full sister, where it's definitely not real and it's designed specifically by the Aes Sedai for that candidate to basically push them to their limits.
These feel like realized worlds. I mean, the ones that Nynaeve goes through where she's the queen of Malkier, with Lan, and the seven towers are standing, and talks about all the gardens, and it's like this feels like it could be real, in the other world where she comes back to the two rivers, and this mean lady is the wisdom, I guess.
Yeah,
that one didn't seem as urgent to me, but I mean, I guess from her perspective it was,
right.
But you could definitely see how this is a real world. If she decides to stay, she could live here and just say bye bye, Tir-Angriel, I'm not going to go back.
It's an interesting thing. I mean, it's testing the will, the focus, the drive, and the dedication of the potential accepted. Like, are they really all in when it comes to becoming an Aes Sedai, or are they going to be distracted and run off?
Right. And her takeaway as she like comes out of it is, I hate Aes Sedai.
And what's funny is one of the Aes Sedai there immediately was like, yeah, that's what they all say. And, you know, she says something like, many have said that, or something. There's almost a comical picture I have of a girl going in and then coming out scuffed up and angry and whatever, and just, I hate you all. And just not even knowing what they went through. It's almost a comical kind of thing.
One point I want to make about this is that this is one of many places where they're not supposed to be wearing a shred of clothing.
Yes, I was going to bring that up too.
Amazon has not, and I've been watching The Boys recently, and of course that is a show that does not shy away from, unfortunately, lots of male nudity and blood and gore. And so I can certainly see, Amazon just leaning into it, but I don't know that it, especially in this scene, I don't know that it adds much. It's like, it's confusing. It's like, all right, they go in without wearing any clothes, but then they're in a world where they are wearing clothes. I don't know. I just don't think it's necessarily important.
I've gotten into arguments with people about this online because, what else do I have to do with me? And because I firmly believe that it is not necessary. I don't think it adds anything. When I see particularly obviously guys saying, I just think you need to have it in there. Like, of course, yeah.
Of course you do.
You do. Right. Yeah.
I mean, especially coming with Game of Thrones expectations. I mean, yeah, I can see it. But yeah, I don't think it's necessary.
I can see the argument for a R-rated level of violence a few times.
For sure.
Better than I can for any of the nudity that is in the books.
I can't think of a situation where it actually adds something.
There's places where even in the book it's distracting, because I'll just go ahead and mention this, even though it's coming later, and I'll bring it up again there too. But there's a part in a later book when they go to a place where Moraine is told to remove her clothes. But here's the thing. Rand and Matt go to the same place.
And are not told.
And are fully clothed.
That is a really good point that I had not considered.
I'm sorry. But if that isn't just obvious objectification and sexism,
for sure,
what it is. I have every bit of respect for Robert Jordan and all the work he's done, but I just feel like, and clearly there's a feminist bent in a lot of these books. But
for sure. But also,
seriously, what's the point of that?
I'm with you.
Most of the moments I don't see the point of. Some of them I can understand, but I also feel like even those moments you don't actually have to show the nudity.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say there are times when, like, I don't know, there's a time where like Aviendha is in like the sweat tent with Rand, and you could do that without the nudity, without showing anything, with them, covered up just barely or whatever, and it would be just the same. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a part where Fael gets stripped down.
Yeah.
Same thing. You don't have to show it, but I do think it's relevant to the scene in that way. More so than it is here, more so than it is some other places. There's one place later in the series where it is utterly ridiculous, and I'm excited to complain about that when we get there, but I'm not going to get into it.
And really, what it makes me, and this has sort of become a Game of Thrones comparison episode a little bit. It really makes me wonder if they're going more for, all right, are we going to try to aim for the audience that, well, obviously the people who are fans of the book, or people are fans of Lord of the Rings, or people are fans of Game of Thrones. Because if they're aiming for the Games of Thrones crowd, then we know exactly what they're going to do. Because there are scenes in Game of Thrones that are downright softcore porn. I mean, no question. So if they're aiming for, if people go into this expecting Game of Thrones and that's what the creators have in mind, then that's what we'll get. Because obviously there's plenty of fodder if they want to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe not quite as graphic as Game of Thrones, but
up to this point, the discussions that have happened with Rick Judkins, he hasn't said explicitly one way or the other, but somebody did ask him, am I going to be able to watch this with my mom, for example? Right. And he more or less said, I want this to be accessible to a lot of people.
I love that. And because I tried to watch the first episode of Game of Thrones with my father, and it was one of the most awkward moments of my relationship with my father that I've ever had.
Yeah, exactly.
He literally walked out of the room, and later I was like, I'm sorry, man, I forgot. I forgot exactly what happened in this, and it was.
It's honestly, something that like I would love to be able to watch it with my folks, because it's something we enjoy watching stuff together. We went to go see Avengers Endgame when it came out. They came over. We all went to go see it together. We went to go see Star Wars together. We're nerdy folks in my family, but I'm hopeful anyway that it's either very little. Certainly they don't need to add anything or none at all, because I really don't think what is in there really adds anything, and especially in this case. So moving on. So yeah, Lianjun shows up. She's like, I'm just going to lie to you straight up and get you all to come away with me. And she was intending just to take Nynaeve and Egwene, but got a little more.
But Elaine was there. Yeah.
Yeah. And so was Min. So they all ended up going away. And then she takes them through the ways, showing that Machin Shin is indeed following Rand. It talks about her reading the different markers in the ways using a map or something. And
she had like some notes, and it's like I did wonder at that point, like how did she, I assume it's just like the Dark Friend Social was like when somebody like handed her directions. I don't know, something like that.
Right. Maybe. So as soon as they come out the way gate, and it's not the first time in the book we're introduced to them. We get a little bit of them earlier. It's really when we get the full force of
the Shan-Chan.
The Shan-Chan.
Yeah, yes. She just hands them over.
Nynaeve and Elaine escape.
Nynaeve kind of goes crazy with the power. She gets mad and she starts channeling.
And
takes on the Damani.
Egwene gets collared.
And thus begins the unpleasant chapters of Egwene the Damani.
Right. Thule, yes. And I just got to say, like the Shan-Chan, you meet the Shan-Chan a little earlier. I think it may be the Padan Fain perspective chapter where you first meet them.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, Hylor Turak, perhaps.
Yeah,
or even Bail Dumont, where Bail Dumont brings the items of the power.
Yeah. That's probably where it is. Yeah, we haven't even talked about Bail Dumont hardly at all, but
right.
And he's
a lot going on in this book.
Yeah, there is. But yeah, we meet the Shan-Chan a few times before this, but we really get to see how awful they are at this point. And
how awful and how powerful with the Damani.
Yes, there are a few things that in this book that make me like as angry as the Shan-Chan.
For sure.
Just the way that the Suldam talk to Damani.
And the fact that of course, which is revealed in this book, the fact that they could be Damani, they're just women who were born who could channel but didn't have the spark in them, who would have to be taught. And so it's like it's a culture built on hypocrisy, essentially.
Exactly. Yes. I mean, there's some social commentary to be like read into that.
Oh yeah.
In regards to, of course, any form of slavery is built on lying to yourself about the nature of humanity. And
I think of Leonardo DiCaprio in Django Unchained, where he talks about like African American skulls being shaped weird. I don't know. There was some moment there where he's a terrible racist.
I mean, it's definitely supposed to harken back to like American slavery in a lot of ways, I think, to make you kind of think of that. And it's a very similar thing where it's just like,
which I guess gets back to what you said about the fact that he's supposed to be a Texan accent. Okay.
Yes. Sure. Right. Yeah. Well, and you just get the picture, like these people really do believe what they're saying about people who can channel have to be collared, have to be controlled, and they need to be talked down to like pets and all this, that it's all part of their whole worldview. As we discover they so cannot deal with the reality that it's all predicated on lies. Even later on in later books, when it's revealed, they still don't accept it.
Yeah, it's just like the Aiel, after Rand reveals their secret, and they have the broken, the brotherless, the Shido who just like deny it. It's the same sort of sort of dynamic.
There is kind of an interesting reality there that when you have a whole culture that's predicated on lies, and it's revealed that this is not the way the world really is, people will still go about living it, even though it's been clearly disproven, and they'll live in
flat earthers.
I just want to say respectfully to any flat earthers listening,
give me a call. I want to talk to you. I haven't met anyone. I haven't met any of them. I would like to.
I haven't met one in the wild.
Exactly.
I would actually be curious to hear from you. Then we have some time spent with Egwene and Min that is supposed to kind of take place over months. Egwene.
Yeah, and I guess that's why we had to have Rand messing up the portal stone and taking 4 months to get to Falma.
Right.
And that's why Machin Shin was waiting in the ways, so that there would be time for Egwene to be collared and to really experience what it means to be a Damani. Right. Which is a really important piece of her character, kind of forms who she becomes.
Right.
But it is interesting to see how he kind of had to, do a little bit of plot gymnastics there.
Right. To make that all work out. Meantime, you got Elaine and Nynaeve are trying to come up with a way to free Egwene. They're kind of scraping by, stealing, and
which is like Elaine is not at all used to living this lifestyle as the daughter heir.
Yeah. So it is kind of, in a much smaller way, it's developing her character as well.
For sure.
Kind of when the spaghetti hits the fan at the end.
I like that. Spaghetti hits the fan.
That's right. Good. And everything breaks loose. And really the end kind of wraps up really fast. It is
one of the best climaxes in the series. I mean, I'm not going to say it's the best, but the Falma is like, it has all of the good stuff in it. It really does.
So just to give the full setup, Rand and Matt and Perrin and Loyal and Varen and Ingtar.
Ingtar, the Shienarans generally.
Yeah, Shienarans, that whole crowd shows up.
After having been stuck in the portal stone for 4 months, living out all of their various lives.
Right. At the same time, Nynaeve and Elaine have
freed Egwene.
Have worked out a plan to leave with Bail.
Right, and Bail Domon is like waiting in the harbor with Spray.
The White Cloaks has shown up.
Yeah, the White Cloaks. The whole thing with Jeffrey Bornhold and the White Cloaks, it's sort of unfortunate. They just sort of end up getting slaughtered by the Damani.
Yeah, we get a little bit more of the White Cloaks earlier in the book, but it's not too major. You're introduced to Jacob Carradine.
And Jarrett Bayar is clear.
Right.
A lot of this setup, a lot of what happens to Jeffrey Bornhold is for Jarrett Bayar's benefit.
Right.
For him to draw his conclusions about what happened. But it is unfortunate because, looking at Jeffrey Bornhold sort of objectively, he's not quite as bad as a lot of the White Cloaks.
Well, and you get that picture from when his son, Dane Bornhold, is a decent guy too later.
Yeah.
And he's kind of the one that later kind of like says, hey guys, we're not really being reasonable here.
Exactly.
At one point.
So a lot of this is setting up things that will happen in future books, but what happens to the White Cloaks in this book is like, well, that was sort of unfortunate.
You do kind of
they like line up and get killed by the Damani. Okay.
Right. You just kind of feel like, oh, well, that's too bad for them. So
I mean, they're White Cloaks, but yeah.
So you kind of have a little bit of a battle of five armies thing that kind of
our heroes are stuck in between this line of White Cloaks and all of the Shan-Chan that are at Falma, the Forerunners.
And then Matt blows the horn. Now, I should have mentioned earlier, they get the horn back. And after they get the horn, Rand fights.
The fights High Lord Turek. Thank you. Yeah, I was gonna because I talked about that extensively in our talk about casting. I really enjoyed that fight, and it is sort of ridiculous. It's like, is he really a blade master? But
it does seem like there's a lot of luck or Tavir.
Yeah, right. Or maybe Luce Theron,
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
It bothers me a lot that we don't hear Luce Theron's voice yet, and I know that there's reasons for that, but it's like, I don't know. It definitely seems like there are times when it would make more sense if Rand was actually sort of, not channeling is the wrong word because channeling is a word, but was Luce Theron in a moment.
Sure.
Like, well, that moment, he's not a shepherd exactly because he's fighting as a blade master.
I will point out, because I want to hear you say the phrase "fair enough" one more time, that there's several times in this book where it refers to a voice said back to Rand in his interior monologue, and his kind of has a dialogue with himself a little bit.
Okay, all right. I guess I can see that. It's just weird how later it's so explicit,
Sure.
And maybe that is just an evolution of the way Jordan decided to write the character. I mean, that's possible, but it bugs me a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. The whole business of him defeating a Blade Master after having practiced for presumably a few months, and everybody's making a big deal over it. The entire book, everybody is like, "Wow, such a young man with a heron marked blade."
But it belongs with him. They always say it looks like it belongs with him.
However, in spite of all this, it is an example of what we're talking about when it comes to the way the fight is written. It sounds epic.
It does. It's true. Like, I want to see that one live for sure.
Yeah, it's just and almost a way that's one of those things that almost can't live up. Is the sword fights have to just sound so cool because of the way they're written.
You need like Ray Park or something to.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah, honestly, the sword fight between High Lord Turok and Rand is in some ways more epic than the fight between him and Ba'alzamon, but not. I mean, obviously, it's not as grand and epic, but in a certain sense of in the mechanics and, like you said, the mental description, it seems harder.
Right,
he's working harder in a certain sense.
Yeah. Getting back to the battle, Matt blows the horn, and the heroes of legend ride
forth on clouds.
Yeah.
Just ride down the mist like it's a mountain. It's very confusing.
This is a scene, while I would love it for them to take as much time getting this book out as possible, I wouldn't be upset if they had to compress the first two books down to one season, just because I want to see this.
I want to see this. I do too. I really do. It's so epic.
You have Arthur Hawkwing and
Birgitte and Gadol Kane.
They're all running out. Now, here's
Rogosh Eagle Eye.
Oh, yes, Rogosh Eagle Eye. Here's a small quibble I have.
Sure, right. I have several quibbles, please.
Okay, the Shan, their whole deal is that they are descended from Arthur Hawkwing. That is,
and that doesn't come up.
At no point does anyone say,
"Hey, that's Arthur Hawkwing," or he's like, "Hey, these are my descendants." No,
right? Like, hey, he's fighting against us,
slaughtering his own people. Yeah, no, and the fact, that brings up my quibble: the fact that Rand recognizes all of them. It's not like they have a Facebook of Arthur Hawkwing.
Yeah, I mean,
how does he recognize them?
We're supposed to believe that, I guess, based off of the books that Rand was reading. He could just look at them and say,
"The Voyage of Jane Farstrider." Yeah, sure. That makes sense, I suppose. But that brings up another quibble of mine, where Arthur Hawkwing talks to Rand and says, "Hello, Luce Theron. I've fought with you. I've fought beside you in many turnings of the wheel." It's like, okay, fine, I get that. If that's true, if Luce Theron is yet another one of these heroes that spun out of the wheel, then why, when he's in Rand's head later, again, this is later books, is he insane still?
Well,
it just 100%. Like, why? I mean, when he was in Teleran Riyadh as one of the heroes before he was spun out, was he insane then? Like,
I mean, that's the way I presumed it, is that this go round of this turning of the wheel, that
he's crazy.
He's been crazy since the breaking of the world.
Okay, I guess that makes sense.
So, which it would be hilarious if Arthur Hawkwing was like, "Hey, Luz, what's up? You still what?"
Right. Just acknowledge that a little bit. But no, he's he treats him with dignity. It's just like, "Luz Theron, you must lead us forth as the dragon."
And this is really the point at which it becomes irrefutable for everyone present.
Rand is the Dragon Reborn,
including Rand to some degree. I mean, it's really
he still tries to fight it.
Same way with Matt and Perrin had.
Yeah, they all noticed. Yeah,
been like
Arthur Hawkwing is talking to you like you're his buddy.
It's kind of pretty obvious at that point. And then Ba'alzamon shows up. There's a
He's like it's that whole part's. It's just the imagery is confusing. It's like, all right, they're all together, but then Rand is separate on a cloud. And Ba'alzamon is there, and they're fighting. It's just the way that whole thing is laid out is like, I understand it's supposed to be epic and it's fulfilling prophecy, but it is also a little bit confusing.
Suddenly they're fighting.
But also the heroes are fighting the Shan, and when he's doing well, they are doing well against the Shan, and when he's falling back, they're falling back.
Yeah, and it's later we find out that the fight was visible. They were visible in the sky
everywhere,
above the battle. Yeah,
and also in other places.
Right, everybody saw this,
right,
to the point that people were making paintings depicting it
right.
Before Rand even recovered from the battle.
Mm-hmm. And Moraine just has one.
Yeah, she's just like, here, I picked this up off of
some street vendor, sold it to me.
It's also, you mentioned earlier, after Rand has the battle with Baalzamon, well, he sheathes the sword because...
Right, yeah, he does the thing where he lets Baalzamon stab him, and then he stabs him in the heart, which should kill him, right? One would think. One would think.
So Chekhov, having been satisfied, Rand receives one of the wounds that he's going to carry.
Yeah, the wound in his side that cannot be healed, that breaks open randomly, like throughout the rest of the books.
So he kind of rescued by men and later Nynaeve. And
yeah, that was also confusing. Like, she found him under a tree. Like, what?
Yeah.
How does she just happen to find it, Tavir? And I get it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, whatever. And does come a point at which, when you start picking apart these things too much, you do have to say to yourself, I mean, this is a book about people using magic. So
they're fighting in the sky.
Right.
Yeah.
Then Rand wakes up. It's maybe a few days later when it's not totally clear. And pretty much everyone is left.
And that's where I was mentioning before that Elaine is not there, but Men is. It's like conveniently, like Elaine doesn't walk up with like Men cuddled up to Rand.
Right.
Like, we haven't quite gotten to the point yet where they're all okay with this.
Yeah, they're all trying to have that conversation.
Egwene does walk up, and Men's like pretty much like, yeah, he's with me, not with you.
Right. Yeah. So like she's like, yeah, he's a guy who can channel, right? And
right. He can't marry, and she's like, well, that's what you think.
Yeah. And when Rand wakes up, Men's there, and Moraine is there, and Moraine really is not in this book much when you think about it.
No, she's not. Yeah, and he's like, where have you been?
And
you've been hiding?
Yeah, he's kind of like angry with her and like, you sent Baron to watch out, and she's like, no.
He's like, no, I didn't.
Yeah, and then the book ends.
Yeah. She's like, it's too late. You must declare yourself the Dragon Reborn, and then it's like he made his choice, and it's like, yeah, obviously.
There are a ton of details in this book that we cover.
Yeah.
I mean, like we didn't even talk about like the dragon banner.
True. Yeah, which is weird enough in the first book where they happen to find it in the Island World, like underneath the pool of Sidene, along with the Horn of Valir. And then like Arthur Hawkwing is like, something is wrong. I'm tied to something. You must hoist the banner. And then like Perrin goes off and like cuts a tree down and ties the banner to it.
They're like, okay, now we can boogie.
Now we can go. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a cool moment where Begita is like riding along, like rides over the water and like shoots a silver arrow at a Shan boat. It's a cool moment. I hope they do that and like sinks it.
I hope they have a good casting choice for Begita. Just
for sure.
I would like her character. So, and of course, Arthur Hawkwing would be an awesome opportunity to have like a huge name
for sure, because he shows up there and like that's it.
And at the end later. But just have him show up and have it be just somebody that would be like ridiculous to
exactly
have show up. Like somehow get Sean Connery to come out of retirement.
Yes,
wouldn't that be awesome?
Make me very happy.
I'm assuming at this point he's probably not in the best of shape since he's been out of the public eye for close to a decade now. But I just imagine having some really crazy cameo.
That'd be great.
Like, I don't care how some people talk about cameos being distracting. I love them. I don't care.
No, I'm all about it.
Yeah, throw it in there. And that'd be fun. We've kind of been all over the place on this one. I'm sure as soon as we stop the recording, it's going to be like, oh, we should have talked about this.
It's true.
There's going to be something, or one of our listeners will let us know something that we missed and be like, why didn't you bring up this? And it's like, well, honestly, we just forgot about it.
I do have one thing. At one point when Nynaeve is being trained, I talked about her setting the towels on fire. But at one point, Varen is trying to train her and talking, they always talk about the rosebud and opening yourself to the rosebud. And Nynaeve is like, this is ridiculous. I don't feel like a flower. I feel like a blackthorn bush.
Yes.
And that's when she likes the stack of blankets on fire.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. There's, there is some great moments in like the training and stuff that I hope so you can, get a picture of just how complex the magic system is. Well, sorry if we didn't touch on any news that's come out. We did record this a couple of weeks ago. And so if any like big news has come out about the TV show or anything, then we have not heard it at this point because it hasn't happened yet. We'll be back next week, probably just diving on into the
Dragon Reborn
book in the series. Yes, the Dragon Reborn.
Also a good book. Good fun book.
Dragon Reborn is unusual.
Lots of IO.
Yes, because it's the first book that is not mainly about Rand, even though it's
true.
The Dragon Reborn. He's not very often a perspective character.
He's a much more perspective character in The Great Hunt than he is in The Dragon Reborn. It's good.
Right. So you get more headspace time with Matt and Perrin. Start to get to like Matt a little more, maybe.
Yeah, he gets away from the dagger.
Thank you again for listening. Please, please, please like, share, whatever else, review us. Give us a 1-star review. I'm a little disappointed, Sam. We haven't gotten a 1-star review yet. I'm hopeful we get at least a 1-star review.
I would like one. I would like reasons. Tell me exactly where we went wrong.
Yeah, I would love an angry rant about how we totally don't get the series and everything as we've said is wrong. So please, yes, review us. We'd love 5 stars, but we'd also like that 1-star review, at least one, just one.
Yeah, for sure.
That'll be fun. Let us know how we're doing. We've got a survey that you can take in the description that tells us about you, tells us who's listening. That'd help us out a little bit, help us get better at what we're doing. Anyway,
maybe I'll check that out too.
So we'll see you next time. And until then, why don't you say it, Sam?
Tai'Shar Manetheren.